Hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power. This is a show that is all about building a better life. And of course, what more could any of us ask for than building a better life? And so we are here once a week to talk for an hour about one element of ways we can build a better life. We hope that it resonates with you and you can use it in your daily life right away. Who's we? If you're a new listener, first of all, welcome. You don't know who we are. I am JDK Winnikin. Across from me is so many things. My friend, my co-host, business partner, a confidant, right? Person who gives me a swift kick in my behind when I need it. But generally speaking, just uplifts every room she comes into. Ashley Kniebel. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
All of that was true, wasn't it?
It was. Thank you. And for those who tune in every week, they're going to start saying it with you.
Exactly. They're going to know, right?
But thank you.
All
Very
coming up
kind.
with their own platitudes and adjectives. So, it's kind of what we do.
That's right.
We do. All right. So how's your week been? Is everything going well?
Good. It's been a full week.
It's been a full week,
Very full week, but
Yeah.
going all right.
Yeah. I always appreciate that when I ask that, you don't just give the rote answer, right?
Oh, the pleasantries?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We've had an episode about that before, right? But you always answer honestly. So yeah, it's been a very full week.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's dive right into it, Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to this topic.
Why?
Okay? Because when it came up, it came from you. This is one of Ashley's topics, everybody. So, because now people are wondering where'd the topic come from, right? Yeah, we're starting to hear that. So, so if you're taking bets and you bet Ashley for this week, you win. Because when you brought this up, Ashley, and it came up, you were, shall I say, equal terms sassy and saucy about
Sure.
it. And so maybe just unpack it a little bit, right? And we'll kind of go from there. This might be one that, like so many of our episodes, might go in some really interesting directions, right? So let's
Perhaps.
see. Yeah. So why don't you introduce
Okay.
the topic for everybody today?
Okay. Well, it all started a long time ago. JD and I were on the phone, and as most of our topics do. And he asked how my day was going in my week, and I had just kind of dealt with something frustrating, and I was going off about the topic of people. People have different paths to life, and I really appreciate them doing that. But when it comes to them not being there anymore for me to rely on them, or in suddenly, like, I have poured into something and the person just leaves. And I'm not talking a relationship. I mean, mostly in like professional settings. Like, I hired, like a coach, or I've hired somebody to help train and whatnot. And in the short run, it's great. They're very present. They're very helpful. And then all of a sudden they just kind of start to fizzle out. And then I'm like, hey, like, I need your help with something. And I'm reaching out and there's like no response. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not what we agreed to. Or there's been, just over the span of my career, there's been a lot of times where I've had certain staff members working for me and I'm like, they're great. I love them. I've poured so much into them and whatnot. And because of life, but they go in different directions and then they're gone. Or like, I'll train people and then all of a sudden they're not doing the things I'm training them to do. And I have to keep retraining, keep going back. And I'm like, it is starting to cause me to want to become so much more independent than I have ever wanted to be. And I believe I once was at one point, and I hated it because of all the things that happened from it. And over the last few years, I've worked really hard to try and learn to rely on the people around me. And, whether it's like in a personal setting with friends and relatives and family, or in professional setting with my coworkers and my team members and staff and whatnot. And recently, it's been just a compound of things to the point that I'm like, I feel like I can't count on people again. And I was in a mood when I was talking to you about it, but it was so frustrating and disheartening. And the disappointment almost felt like grief in a way, actually. Because I'm like, since I feel like I can't count on people anymore, like, I don't even want to try to count on people anymore. I don't want people around anymore for me to have the illusion that they're going to be there for me.
Because if you're expecting them to let you down.
Yes. And I'm like, don't even get my hopes up. Like, if you're not going to be there, then don't ever be there at all. I would rather fully know what I don't have than have the illusion of having something and losing it later.
Okay.
So that's where that topic came from.
But you also, you're right. That is a good description.
Was there something else?
You also expressed, though, how you don't really like being in that space.
No, I don't. That's why I worked so hard to get out of it the last few years, because I think we lose connection when we're not reliance on other people.
Yeah, when we're
right?
not willing to be helped.
Yes.
Right.
And, when you become so rebelliously independent, then you purposely shut off all ways that people could really connect with you because you don't want to open up the doors of the possibility of the disappointment and the letdown and whatnot. And that's great. Build your walls, but it's so lonely and isolating behind them. And are you really any happier behind all those protective walls than you were dealing with the disappointment of somebody letting you down?
Right. Well, I think the big thing that came up for me when this first came up was you don't like being in that space, and recognize that that's not a great space to sit in perpetuity.
Sure.
Second, I'm not sure how often people are aware of that, because what we get inundated with messages about being, it's all the terminology, independent, boundaried, right? Throw them out or whatever, if they're not serving you, right? Then let that go. And yes, to certain degrees, depending on what we're talking about in the situation, those things can be just fine. However, what struck me was if you follow that out to its logical conclusion, you end up hiding behind those things, right? Notions of being, boundaried, I don't need any help, I'm independent, I'm self-guided, all those kinds of things. Those can be great by themselves, but to go too far down that path means you actually are hiding behind that. You talked about walls. It's one thing to have boundaries. It's another thing to have walls.
Well, those are two separate things.
Two different things, but it's a very fine line. And I think you were kind of expressing to me, at least the way I took it, you were kind of expressing to me, you were right up and aware that you were right up on that line in that moment of like, yeah. So yeah, you were pretty animated. And yeah,
animated.
Is
that your nice way of saying I was saying some words?
You were salty. There was salty. There was some fisherman's language in there. Yeah, it was. But it was
I have
good.
no such things.
Yeah, but how has that resolved itself at all? Did it settle down from there? Anything you want to share about where you went after that?
I went for a walk.
Always good.
I did, just because those helped me clear my mind a little bit. And we're a couple days removed from this conversation. And so some of the quote unquote saltiness and spiciness that JD was talking about, the seasonings have calmed down. However,
we're not at 5 chili peppers anymore.
We are not. The heat is still there, but the seasoning's a little calm because I still feel strongly about that. And it's actually something that is still a little bit of a struggle. I mean, to be honest, on the show, that's, what we're about, like us getting better and hopefully helping others people get better. But it is still a bit of a struggle for me in present day.
Yeah, me too.
To it, because there is such and it's so much inundation, like you said, on social media right now and whatnot is everywhere. It's like, be the independent, especially like right now. It's like, be the independent woman. You don't need anybody anymore. You can do it all yourself. And I'm like, yeah, but who wants to? Like, I don't. I would like some help. I like having people around that I know I can count on in need. And I'm sure if there's a diehard emergency, I have those people. But on the day-to-day, when you're building your life and your routines and you're trying to accomplish things and you put things and people and whatnot in place, and there is a constant letdown, it brought me so far back to where I was a few years ago. It's like, okay, thank goodness you're recognizing this. And what? Do you really want to go back there again and do it all yourself and burn yourself out every week and be exhausted, but know that everything got done and that's going to help you sleep well at night? Or what can you do in that situation? Do you switch the people out? Do you go back and retrain? Do you lessen your expectations? Like, there are certain things you can do in the situation. And then at the same time, I'm like, well, but I don't want to do that. Should I have to do that? Sometimes people should just do what they're supposed to do. Should I make up for their lack of? It's not my job here. They have a job. They should do their job.
Right. Does that make you feel any better, though, saying that?
Yes.
It does.
Sometimes.
Short term or long term? I know.
Short term.
I'm really pushing your buttons. I know I am.
Because he likes the side.
I know
That's
I
why.
am. I know I am.
No, short term. Long term, saying is one thing, but doing is where you'll get the results from.
Yeah. There's two words that stood out when you talked about it. I think a minute ago you said rebellious, right? That there was a rebelliousness to this.
Yeah.
And then the other word you used was grief, which when you originally said that when we talked about it, and that jumped out at me. If it's grief, the rebellious part I think is evident, right? Okay, you're not going to show up for me and do these things. I'm not going to need anybody, and therefore, by extension, I'm not going to show up for you.
Mm-hmm.
right? There's that, and which is kind of a punitive way of doing things, right? And if we really break that down to kind of, if we were to put an age on that, it's not an age where you and I happen to be right now,
No.
right? To play that out in its long term, to have the impulse about it, I think is normal, right? We all go there. The grief part, what do you think the grief is in that? What's the grief? Is it grieving the failed expectations or the unmet expectations? What's the grief?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I think that's what I felt in
Okay.
a way, was just the disappointment, and the grief that was the word I used, and that's why, is because it feels so fitting, even though on paper that's probably not the word I would have chosen, but it's what it felt like when you get past the saltiness and the initial fire of all of that. And that's what it was. I'm like, great. I can't count on these people all the time. And in the moments when I need to count on them, they're not there. And to think that there was the initial, like, they're not there. Okay, that's rough. That's disappointing. But then I started to question, like, well, were they ever really there?
Oh, yeah.
Was this a facade that I believed in and thought it was there and it wasn't? And then it's like, okay, I also had the envisioned future of what it was going to look like working with these people, or, having them in my life or whatnot. And now they're gone. So now there's the grief of the future that's no longer there, that you envisioned.
Yeah.
And maybe you built that was going to be the foundation for building things in your life, in your occupation or whatnot on. And all of a sudden that foundation is gone. So it's like, well, now the dream is gone, or I need to find a new foundation to build to put the dream back on.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like in the past, a present, and a future dismantling of all of it. And there was a part of me that I'm like, well, this really sucks. And what do I do with this?
Yeah. And the initial impulse can be to armor up, right? Which is that essentially, right? Maybe not the literal middle finger, but an emotional
yes,
middle
which
finger.
I think is probably for a lot of people is my default.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of us have that switch somewhere, right? I certainly know I do. And I relate to this. That's the other reason why it resonated with me as a topic. You're talking about it in the context of work, but obviously it extends out beyond that, right? It extends to everything else. For me, I've related to that since you've talked about it on a real personal level, in that I got so used to, when I was coming out of my crazy days that I've talked about many times on the show before, and I literally had to rebuild my life. I had to learn how to do a lot of things on my own in a healthy way to kind of separate from toxic ways of glomming onto people or wanting other people to help me or save me. That's how it was. I had to learn how to, stand on my own 2 feet, metaphorically, right? I had to do that. And it took a long time to untangle a lot of codependent habits and things like that had been really a part of my life for my entire life up until that point. What's interesting now, though, and I've been reflecting on it since our conversation, is I can struggle on reconnecting on the other side of that, right? I think it was important for me to be able to kind of clear things out and get rid of ways of looking at things, habits, even working on traits that relied on those types of things, overly so. And yet now, and people have mentioned it to me before, wow, JD, you come across like you really don't need / want / are comfortable with anybody helping you with anything. And there can be truth to that, right? Not because I don't think I can ask for help, because I can.
Right.
I just don't automatically think about it. And I don't go to a spot where I'm expecting people to, show up for me. Now, I say that until somebody who I really hope does,
Sure.
Right. But I just don't even go there either, which is kind of its own challenge. Because does then that mean that I'm not giving people the opportunity to be humans and show up? Or I just keep my expectations so low so I don't have to raise my level to show up for somebody else?
Interesting.
There's an element of hyper independence that I think is kind of what we're talking about. You're talking about having the impulse of pushing it away in the context of work and things like that, even though it cuts well beyond work. That's how I resonated with it, was from that direction. Maybe part of me has been doing that for a long time, subtly, not with a middle finger, but just I've got to keep proving to myself that I do not do unhealthy, toxic interpersonal relationships because I'm so afraid of going back to them. So afraid of losing myself in them. Right. I don't know the answer to that. But when you brought that up and you used the word grief, that was really powerful because for me, in the context I'm talking about, there is grief. There's grief looking back at a time where I was so lost and so far gone that the things that I had around me that in retrospect, I really wish I would have valued more, took better care of, shown up better for, those opportunities are gone. Those people are gone. Those times are gone, right? That career path is gone. I think there is a level of grief under that. Like I'm trying to prove to myself now that by not needing anything and by staying, free of those types of entanglements, which might actually just be coming across as just not being connected. By doing that, I'm preventing myself from going back there. Or I'm hoping that that's somehow going to heal me by itself from those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Interesting how we took that two separate directions.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, let's keep talking about it. We'll flesh it out. But first, we got to take a break. And when we come back on Staying Power, we'll continue with this topic. But we'll also, first thing, do our weekly segment, 2 Minutes of Terror, or 2 Minutes of Triumph this week, actually.
It's a
triumph this week, which is good. And and of course, during the break, make sure you pay attention to the commercial that's there for our sponsor, Pars Revive Renovation, our wonderful sponsor. There's a commercial that we're doing for them now, and it's going to be playing in the middle of this. So take a listen to that and make sure you reach out to them at parsrenovation.com to see the type of work they can do in your house. You can work with us to kind of clean things up on the inside. You can work with them to clean up your house on the inside. They're awesome. So we'll be back here in just a minute on Staying Power. On Staying Power, we talk a lot about building a better life.
And a big part of that is the space you live in every day.
That's why we're excited to partner with Pars Revive Renovation, helping homeowners across the East Side and Puget Sound create spaces that truly reflect who they are.
Whether it's a kitchen, bathroom, or full home renovation, Pars Revive focuses on thoughtful design, quality craftsmanship, and your unique vision.
Because just like personal growth, your home should evolve with you.
To learn more, visit parsrenovation.com. That's PARS renovation.com and start building a space that supports the life you want to live.
Most people wait until their relationships fall apart before they look for answers. But what if you could learn from the experts before the damage is done? On the Glenn Gilbert Connection, I sit down with psychologists, coaches, and real people who've lived through the fire, so you don't have to. If you're ready to lead with clarity, love with intention, and build something that lasts, tune in every 2 weeks on Sundays from noon to 1 p.m. for the Glenn Gilbert Connection, where grown folks come to grow.
Alternative Talk 1150, the talk of the sound.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with Ashley.
Hello.
And we are talking about I don't even know how to summarize the topic. It's really, how do we know when we're being truly kind of independent and when we're probably maybe engaging in some hyper independence that may not be serving us. Right. And grief could be behind it, could be a bunch of other things. We'll get back to that in just a minute. However, we have a weekly segment where Ashley and I each take a couple minutes, talk about something that happened during our week, how we responded to it, what we're learning from it, all in the name of sharing with you, our wonderful listeners, and encouraging you to do the same in your own life, because vulnerability, openness, curiosity, some laughter, some shared experience is a key part of building a better life. So here we go, 2 minutes of triumph. Cha-ching. There we go. That's a triumph. So, all right.
Okay.
Ashley,
all
go
right.
ahead.
Well, I realized when I was going to talk about this, I'm going to preface, this is not anything to do with the topic. Like, I'm not talking about a staff member that left me and I'm grieving her gone.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But I have a triumph of the fact one of my staff members did recently move to New York City.
Nice.
And I miss her already. However, now that she's living in New York City, there is a play going on Broadway.
Uh-huh.
And it's related to Harry Potter.
Uh-huh.
And Tom Felton's in it, playing Draco. And I'm making plans to go see it with her.
Making plans to go to New York City.
Yes, we're going to go see the Broadway show Cursed Child. I'm not exactly sure the date yet, but I am overjoyed and so excited.
Have you been to New York City?
I have. It's been a long time.
Okay.
But what better time to go to New York City, but when it's warm, because I'd prefer that, and to go see somebody I know and care about, and to go see some Harry Potter related things. and see Draco Malfoy. I'm so excited.
Here's the fangirl, everybody. Here's the fangirl.
My little inner Slytherin is
yeah,
very
inner
excited.
Slytherin, the cosplaying Slytherin. Yeah, that's fun.
So, yeah, it's
That's
fun.
fun. So sometime in the next few months, is that what you're planning?
I
or?
think we're shooting for July.
Oh,
so
July.
I'm going to be roasting. But
You are
going
going to be roasting and melting.
And melting.
So, which,
It's all good.
that's fun. Super
Yeah.
fun. I love New York City. I absolutely love New York City. I don't care how expensive it is. The vibe there is just unbelievable.
Yes.
Well, that's fun. Mine is not nearly as exciting as that. However, my triumph is I mentioned on the show that I've moved recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I am really excited to report that I am sleeping so much better.
That's great.
And I think I figured out the reason why.
Because you moved?
No, it's not just
Oh.
because I moved, but because my entire apartment has hardwood floors.
Oh.
There's no carpet in this place.
Oh, my goodness.
There's something about having all the hardwood floors, like it's not collecting all the dust, all the dirt. I'm able to spot it, clean it up faster. It's easier to keep clean.
Yeah.
And a cool thing too is I get my HVAC filter replaced every month as part of my
Oh, really?
lease agreement,
Wow.
which is cool. Really cool.
That's-
That seems to be making a big difference. And so I'm just noticing my sleep is so much better. And
Because of the hardwood floors.
I think it's because of the hardwood floors.
Okay.
That is my complete unscientific.
Did you ask Pars Renovation about that too?
I should. They might know. And yeah, actually, I really do think that's a thing.
Probably.
And it could very well be that the apartment I'm in is newer than the one I was in before. So I'm wondering if, there's less crap in the walls, or whatever that I was
Sure.
breathing in. But I just feel so much better. I don't want to make it sound like I was living in a terrible place before.
Living in
I was living in an awesome place before. I
It
loved
was good. It was
But
good
this
stuff.
place, I'm just sleeping better, and it's making a huge difference across the board
Nice.
in everything else. Yeah.
Very
Yeah. I
good.
don't think I realized how my sleep had been pretty adversely affected. The last place I was in there for 8 years. So,
wow.
yeah, I was there 8 years. So this place is, it's
Jamie's
brand new.
getting younger.
I know. It's pretty fun. But anyway, that's a
Cool.
big triumph.
That's huge.
So
Sleep's very important.
it's not New York City,
for us
but man,
oldies.
yeah, it's oldies. You're calling yourself an oldie.
I'm getting there. I'm not there yet, but I'm
If
on
you're,
my way.
you're getting there, then I'm getting to ancient.
Oh, it's
so-
vintage.
Vintage. Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you for that. And hopefully all of you out there, hopefully you'll sleep better and get to go to New York City or something like that. Hope you're having your own triumphs. Okay. So Ashley, let's get back to the topic. What is really happening underneath when we have these reactions? These reactions of we cannot count on somebody. To a certain degree, we can say, I think with confidence, sometimes those are the result of our expectations not being met. And maybe there's a problem with our expectations. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, okay, sorry for the aside. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, Ashley is currently making fun of me for talking with my hands. I talk with my hands.
Gosh.
Well, actually, I
It's
speak
like a
with my
whole
mouth.
other
but my hands-
language happening right now.
I know, but you're all crossed up. You've been crossed up since you sat down.
Maybe it's the topic.
I think it is the topic. I think that part of you is kind of, focused and, that protective shell's going on a
Sure.
little bit. But nevertheless, I'm speaking with my hands. What was I saying? See, now I'm all derailed. Some of this is unmet expectations.
Mm-hmm.
We can have an expectation that may or may not be realistic that the people that we think are going to show up for us all the time are going to show up for us all the time.
This is true.
Could there be a challenge there? Is that something you thought about? Like, should I have these expectations in the first place?
Yes. And there's, yes, in the short answer. And I have thought too, like, okay, if I don't have those expectations, the mature side of me is like, Ashley, it's okay to not have those expectations and to not be difficult about it.
Sure.
It can just be like, hey, just show up the best as you can and count on yourself, and not in a like rude way, not like
Mhm.
it's only me and nobody else. It's like, just know that you really can count on you, and some people are going to let you down. It's just going to be, because that's
Yeah.
the human way.
Yeah.
That, nobody's perfect, and not get so attached when that happens. And I'm not to say it's like totally debilitating. Actually, I think I've gotten really good at just being able to like pick up and keep moving when this happens.
Mhm.
However, I think there is a way to be able to handle it softly
Yeah.
instead.
Agreed.
And there are times I have to remind myself that no, we're going to handle this softly.
So no middle fingers, what you're saying.
I just folded them back where they
Fold them
belong,
back.
stowed them away.
Well, yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead.
But, I think that was kind of it. But there is something there.
Yeah. A couple things come to mind for me. First, to not have those expectations doesn't mean you shouldn't have any expectations. And that's the flip side, right? We tend to, okay, I'm not going I'm not going to expect or anything from anybody. That's a pendulum swing the other way, right? Because the danger there is that then you're kind of giving yourself permission to not show up, right, in an effective way either. That's one side of that. The second part that comes up for me with that, besides the expectations piece, we get hung up on that. But expectations that people don't know that they're under can be a reason why we're feeling so disappointed, right?
Sure.
Which goes back to the episodes we did probably about a year or so ago on agreements. Because what agreements are expectations spoken out loud, shared with the person that you are expecting them from, hearing what they might be expecting from you, and agreeing that this is in the nature of our relationship, this is what we are agreeing to do. And then as soon as it becomes an agreement, the expectation is only measured by how well it matches what's already been agreed upon. So many of the problems that we can run into with expectations and the reactions we have when they're not met is because we haven't spoken them. Another person doesn't know that they're under that kind of scrutiny, right? Or that kind of thing. And now in the workplace, it might be a little different because there's expectations laid out for the job. And I realize that's what you're talking about. People not showing up for the things they've agreed to. And of course, if you've agreed to them, in some ways it becomes even worse when someone doesn't live up to that they've already agreed to. That makes it harder emotionally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think it can minimize the chance of that disappointment happening when the agreements are there. But if it does happen, I think it can hurt all the more.
Well, yes. And in a job setting, there are loud, spelled out, signed off agreements. And that's when at time, and there's certain things where it's like, okay, like, we'll have our moments. We got to kind of realign ourselves. Like, it's almost like renewing your vows. Like, I feel like people at work every once in a while need to go back and reread like what they agreed to when they took the job.
Yeah.
And especially if the job has grown and evolved, then you really need to like, okay, reassess. Like, okay, what exactly is my description and my responsibilities and whatnot? But there are times where it's like, in the past, I'm like, I've known people that actively do not do their job on the job. And I'm like, and you're doing this and you're causing a problem and you're okay with that. What is wrong with you? Is what I want to ask. And it's not the question I can ask, but at the same time, I'm like, is it not, the light bulb's not going off there? Like, you're okay with this? And then I start to wonder like, well, what does that say about you as a person?
Sure.
And maybe that's my big sign telling me you're not the right person anymore.
Yeah, and I can see where that would extend into then asking about your own judgment. I'm the person who brought this person on. What did I miss? And it's easy to say. There's plenty of people, and we've seen it. There's plenty of people who interview real well.
Sure.
How to say the right things in the right ways, and then get on the job and it doesn't go the way you thought it was, right? Yeah. And that's why I always talk with clients. It's like, look, if you want to be successful in a job, don't twist yourself into a pretzel to get the job, because if you get it, they're going to expect the pretzel.
Right.
And they have the right to expect the pretzel.
Right.
Because that's the job that you agreed to. Right. But they don't know that you're turning yourself into a pretzel to do that. And I'm not hungry right now, I promise. I don't know why I'm using a food analogy, but I know we should, but we're not supposed to have
seasonings earlier, so it makes sense.
Yeah, spicy pretzels. But anyway, point being that I think that part can be a real challenge, because then we're second guessing ourselves and not just that other person.
Well, and if you leave that kind of feeling unchecked for a long time, it really does. I mean, like anything, it bleeds into other areas of your life. And just in looking back on the days when I very much was grounded in that, like, I can do it myself, it'll get done right if I do it myself. I was so cynical about a lot of things, and my initial response, and maybe people didn't recognize this, maybe they did, but my initial response is like, oh, that person's not going to do it right. They're going to probably do it wrong. My expectation is they're going to do it wrong. And which I didn't voice it.
Right.
But I'm like, and then when they do, I'm like, oh, yep, just more evidence that I was right and I can't count on people.
Right.
And
they've taken a test they didn't know they were taking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, how many times do we do this with friends and spouses and all the other things, And so then I'm like, okay, well, if I didn't say anything about the test, then I can't also say anything to them about the results and my distaste for their results. So I'm like, okay, you really have to keep all that under wraps to yourself. Right. But it's not healthy at all to leave that unchecked. And I finally hit a wall. I burnt myself out from doing too much of that. And then I noticed my quality of life at that point was low.
Yeah. What did that
Very
look like?
low.
What did that look like?
Right.
Yeah. You said you burnt yourself out. I'm really interested genuinely in hearing this because I have a hard time imagining you burnt out to a point where you said your life was really adversely affected like that. What did that look like?
Well, it was a combination of things, but I started doing more things myself because they were not getting done right or they weren't getting done at all or whatnot. So that's adding more and more and more to my plate. Now, some of this was in my control and a lot of this was also outside of my control. But I knew the people that I had with me, they could only carry so much, so I took on the rest.
Ooh.
But I was also like, okay, this needs to be done, and I'm probably the only one that can do it, and nobody else is willing to stay and do it, so it's going to be me. And so all the extra pressures I was putting on myself and the expectation I set for those pressures
Stress.
was very stressful.
Resentment.
So I'm walking in every day in a terrible mood, like assuming the day is not going to be excellent and assuming that things are going to go wrong. So what you look for, you find. And that's what I found most times. And then my attitude was not great. I was very short fused. I was not sleeping well. I was overstressed. So I was trying to still eat good, but most of the times I was working straight for 10 hours without a break. Didn't even like walk outside my office. Didn't go eat lunch, like nothing. So now my cortisol levels are high. My sleep sucks. My diet's not great. My body is running on adrenaline most days and it gets no break. So now I don't have any good, healthy stored energy to do anything good for myself. So
No
I'm not
healthy
working out as much, right? You know, it's like this whole culmination of a cycle. And then anytime the people around me in my like inner circles were, if there was like a small disagreement, it felt so much larger. So much larger. It was like a constant, like stretched rubber band. And I'm like, it's going to snap and break at some point. And I don't know what it's going to be that's going to cause it to snap and break. Probably something really small.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And what stands out to me is how all behind closed doors that is. Right?
Yeah.
Literally behind closed doors when you take it home.
Yeah.
Right? And behind the closed doors of what's going on with you. I mean, people can see it. They can see, oh, Ashley's in a terrible mood. Right.
Yeah.
And for people who really pick up on people's energy, it's, obviously going to be really, really palpable. Right. But then how it's almost self-fulfilling. Right. Because we start looking for those things like I'm expecting the day to go poorly. So we're looking for evidence that the day is going to go poorly. And then when we find it, because we will, we reinforce that feeling and it adds that stress. It adds that. We can feel self-righteous in the moment. Like, see, I was right. See, I knew. And we burn on that fuel, right, for a while. But then it just creates that same cycle over and over again. So that's what it looked like. Okay. I'd be interested to hear how that changed.
Okay.
So we'll get there. I think it'd be good to do that when we get into the practical steps of what we're going to do. I appreciate you letting me push you a little bit on that because I do think that's something that is powerful because I know that for a lot of the listeners we have who listen to you and enjoy the strength you bring and the humor that you bring, I think a lot of them also relate to that feeling of, I have these responsibilities and certain things have to get done, right? And they got to get done right, or at least, but I think your self-introspection on that, at least looking back, shows me a lot about ways to maneuver ourselves out of that. And the first one is to recognize that you're doing it. Right.
Well, I got that done.
Yeah. And real quick, before we take our second break, how long ago do you think you came to that awareness that this is what you were doing and you needed to do something different?
Ooh, let's see. We're in May of 2026 right now. It probably was late summer last year. Middle to late summer. Yeah. It started a couple years ago, probably in 2024. It's about a year and a half.
Of just that peak intensity. Okay. I was wondering if that's when it was.
So if any of our listeners ever noticed during that period of time.
It's interesting when we can see the armor only in retrospect. And I have a lot of empathy for that because I can do the same thing where I can look back in some part of my life and go, wow, I didn't realize how closed off I was or how much I was burning with something, resentment, frustration, And that's the thing. What ends up happening is we take all the benefits of solitude and turn it into isolation and project it outward against other people as the enemy. Like, I shouldn't have to do this.
Right.
But because they can't do A, B, and C, that's a challenge. So.
Well, and solitude's supposed to be enjoyable. Isolation's not.
Exactly. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, we'll talk about some practical ways to kind of move through this kind of thing or notice when it's coming, because it does happen with all of us. But we'll talk about those as we always do in the last part of every show here on Staying Power. Come on back.
If you've been thinking about upgrading your home, this might be your sign.
We're proud to be sponsored by Pars Revive Renovation, serving Bellevue, the East Side, and the greater Puget Sound.
They specialize in turning everyday spaces into something functional, beautiful, and tailored to you.
From kitchens and bathrooms to full renovations, they bring the same level of care and attention to detail that we talk about here on Staying Power.
Because your environment matters. It shapes how you feel, think, and live.
Check them out at parsrenovation.com. That's P-A-R-S renovation.com and see what's possible for your home.
Don't ask me to talk.
There's a lot of talk out there. Political talk, sports talk, girl talk, trash talk, and so on. But there's only one, Don't Ask Me to Talk, helmed by conversational off-roaders and podcast pals Eric Ryder and Stacy Heller. They follow every tangent they encounter, from cultural blind spots to their infamous weekly Wheelo topics. Listen wherever you listen to your fave podcasts. Subscribe and share too. Or tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. or Tuesday at 4 p.m. on KKNW.
Bored with the other stations, hammering away on the same old talking points? Try Alternative Talk 1150 and get some variety.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD still here with Ashley.
Still here.
So let's go ahead and jump into this. But
Sure.
before, let's kind of, maybe a good way to summarize some of the things we want to talk about is, if we're looking back on the last two segments, it seems to me the following points are worth making again to kind of encapsulate that. When we feel let down, it often creates a form of grief, right?
Mhm.
And we all respond to grief in different ways. Sometimes it's constructive ways, sometimes it's not. And that can be its own minefield. Betrayal, broken trust on any level, workplace, at home, anything like that, changes our risk calculations, right? When we feel that, we're less willing to take risks, healthy risks in particular, because we don't want to be hurt, we don't want to be let down. And so we can actually then turn that outward in anger and use it as a way to feel strong, but it's really a way to protect ourselves. And in that sense, this idea of I don't need anyone is more like a kind of form of rebellious peace, or rebellious protest, I should say, and not peace, right? It's a protest. It's meant to be peace. I don't need anyone, but it's actually you're protesting the very idea of that. I think that's an important point. And finally, as we mentioned earlier, boundaries by themselves are not walls. And so you don't have to build walls in order to feel boundaried, right? Because one of the things that we talk about with our clients a lot is when you really connect with someone, you don't have to worry about walls or boundaries because you are seeing them and connecting with them. And those things just sort of naturally emerge, right? Okay. So with all that said, right, let's talk a little bit about some practical things that we can do. So Ashley, where would you start with that? And where did you start with yourself?
Well, it's kind of all over the place, and it took some time to unravel it. But I think a good place for anybody to start is to, when you're in your moments of isolation and solitude, and figure out, like, am I here because I'm armored, or am I here because I'm peaceful? And figure out which one it is. And like you said at the beginning, it's recognizing that is the first step. And if you recognize it as I am armored, I'm here by myself because I want to protect myself because I can only count on me. Recognizing that is a great start. But we want to find a way to make that armor more peaceful.
Right. So, because that looks like a certain thing.
It
right?
does. And, you can visually see the difference in people when they're this way or that. And I started going for walks outside. That's constant. I started doing that, and I didn't do it thinking like, well, this is going to help me calm down. I'm going to get some fresh air. I'm going to walk off my frustration. I'm going to glare at everybody I walk by so no one says hi to me. Like, no, I needed to do something to dispel a little bit of what I'm feeling, and I needed to be probably outside because I knew a distraction, change of my environment would probably help, and getting away from the areas that were constantly causing me to feel that way.
Yeah.
And when you go outside and meander on a walk, you obviously get further away from that.
You do. And I think, honestly, when we connect with something else,
Mm-hmm.
it opens up our ways to connect with other things.
Yeah. So
Right.
I would go for walks after work, like 30 minutes at
Yeah.
night.
Yeah. It's funny. It's the image that comes to mind is, when we want to connect, an electrical current, we plug in something that we need to turn on, right? We turn on the light. But that electrical current is still feeding everything else,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can plug in other things and get that same connection, right? I think that matters a lot. Okay, that's a good one. I think that whole thing about grief, what are you actually grieving? What's the grief under the reaction? And I would say not to be afraid of, the grief is about my own expectations not being met, and those expectations perhaps weren't realistic. So what?
Mm-hmm.
Expectations, almost by definition, usually aren't realistic, particularly if they haven't been spoken or agreed upon, right? Like we were talking about earlier. So name the grief. You don't have to judge it, right? The grief could be, I really thought I could trust this person and I couldn't, and I feel foolish,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I feel like I should have seen this coming, or I feel like I'm overinvested, or, and usually it's something like having to do with that. We feel weak, we feel vulnerable, we feel fooled, and we don't like feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the grief underneath it, right? That is a whole lot softer than the idea of, I just don't care anymore.
100%. Yeah.
And it's more realistic,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
chances are there's something in the mirror that we can look at and go, okay, that's part of the problem here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. Another one I would say and also did was, I guess in a way, is kind of compartmentalizing things. So if instead of being like, everyone's letting me down, I can't count on anybody,
Everybody
like these
always falls
very blanket comments and statements that are not actually applicable to people
Mhm.
always, all the
Always.
time, and not everybody. So there are times when I was like, okay, Ashley, it's not everybody you know. Everybody you know will probably let you down at some point,
Sure.
but they're not all letting you down today.
Mm-hmm.
And they all didn't let you down this month. So let's not throw that blanket onto everybody. And oddly, recognizing that and being like, no, this is fine. This
Mhm.
went well. This was good. Really helped me to actually see the issue. And it looked a lot smaller than it felt, because it felt like it was huge and it was everybody. And then when I really started to boil it down, it's like, no, it's not everybody and it's not all the time.
Yeah.
And actually that somehow helped the emotional turmoil I was feeling and abrasion and flare up. It started to diminish that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that discernment that brings together the emotional and the intellectual to go, okay, what actually did happen?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that resonates with what you said about that is I like to remember sometimes that a person can let me down in one area of life or not meet up, but in other areas they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? And they can consistently show up in those places. And I always like to remind myself that there are probably things I don't show up as well with.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right? And I want to be open to hearing that from people. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a few friends who will not shy away from telling me that. Right. Which I always appreciate. It never feels good in the moment, but it sure does feel good to repair that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And go, okay, I can see that. And let me try and make some adjustments. And I think a certain level of graduated trust to kind of respond back to this rather than completely jettison this. Like at the first sign of a leak, you don't jump out of the boat. Right. It's like discern what the leak is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it come from? Can you plug it? Right? Is there a problem? Is it really a danger? You can kind of ratchet back. Like if certain things, like you realize, okay, this person can't count on them for this.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you can't count on them for anything.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to respond with, okay, the nuclear option,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was all trust before, now there's none, right? That would be the equivalent of leaping out of a leaking boat into the ocean, right? That lacks that discernment. So make lower stakes asks of that person, right? Don't disclose as much. Maybe just make that smaller. And really notice if you're really resenting that you can't do more than that. Because if you're resenting that you can't do more of that, that might be a sign that the problem comes back to the expectation that you had in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, if you can accept that certain people cannot meet certain expectations or certain standards, you don't have to hate them for it.
Right.
Might have to adjust things. And certainly that would allow for a little more peace of mind of acceptance. It doesn't mean you have to tolerate it, doesn't mean you have to say it's right, doesn't mean you have to like it. But it doesn't have to hold so much energy that you become the person being harmed.
Right.
Because chances are that other person has no idea that they're doing that kind of harm.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's drinking poison and hoping the other person dies.
You're right.
Right?
That doesn't help anyone.
Nope, doesn't help. What else you got?
Another thing that I did was, we kind of mentioned this earlier also, but about setting boundaries, but they were boundaries for me because I was like, had a really great heart to heart with myself a few times. I'm like, what are you actually getting out of this? Do you get any satisfaction
Out of this attitude, or this approach?
Yes.
Yeah.
From this approach and carrying the weight yourself and doing it all by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't. I'm like, do you like it? No. Do you want to keep doing it this way? No. So I'm like, okay, well, then you have to be your own advocate too. And I started putting up boundaries, and they weren't coming from a wounded, I'm going to snap at you and set a boundary. It wasn't like that. It was more of when a task came up, I was like, no, not today. Or I'm going to task this to somebody else. Or I will do all of it until this time. And I will not go beyond that. I will not work on the weekend anymore. I will not, and
And your own self-boundary.
right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't in a rebellious way. And it was just at the point where I'm like, I can't actually keep doing this. I will end up in a hospital. And none of these people that I'm upset about are worth it. I am worth standing up for myself. So I'm going to do that in a very healthy manner. And it was a very slow progression of setting the boundaries one at a time. And sometimes it looked more like I'm going to task somebody with something and I'm going to give them very firm, clear instructions. And I am going to really hope that they get it done. They've done it at the right time and it turns out okay. And I was like, Ashley, you are waging too many bets on all these things.
Oh.
And you're emptying your bank out every day doing that. And I'm like, at the end of the day, no one's going to die, thankfully, if that doesn't get done and if it doesn't get done right. And I'm like, when did you start putting so much importance on these things? Like, it is your job. So this is a big deal and your job affects a lot of people. So it does have importance. It is heavy. But I'm like,
but perfection doesn't. Right.
Yes. And I'm like, and you're gambling every day and placing bets on people that you have no control over. And you don't like to gamble. So what are you doing? I'm not a gambler. And when I started doing that and just putting up slower boundaries with myself, and they were slow. It was one at a time. And I tried to do it as much as I could with ease. And it slowly got better. And it took people some time to be like, oh, she's not doing it all by herself. She's not going to stay and work on the weekend anymore. She's not,
Right. Did you find that by doing that, some people who you were kind of graduating that trust downward, did some people start to show up better?
Yes. It was great.
That's the interesting thing about this. This is going to sound like it's out of left field, but I promise it fits. I've learned to trust, and Ashley and I both have learned to trust on the show. When something comes to us, a memory, a thought in the conversation, we've learned to trust it and just bring it to the table. This reminds me of a dream I had about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was a really, really important, vivid dream, but it was almost in storybook form. I was in the midst of a very difficult personal situation with a very close friend of mine. We were just at odds. And we were really working hard not to be, but we had just really had a series of issues that had kicked off the worst parts of ourselves, right? And so we were taking some time away before we were going to kind of repair. This is somebody I've known most of my life. And so it was really painful. And I couldn't make sense of it. And I knew I was trying to over-intellectualize everything, right? Trying to find all the right word, the right phrase. I was still in very much a fix-it mode. I don't spend a lot of time in fix-it mode anymore. But I had this dream where I was sitting on a hill. I was like in a children's storybook. It had that feel to it. I was sitting on a hill. There were little flowers everywhere. And there was this half wall of brick running up over the top of this. And I was sitting on one side of it. And I had my back against it. And I knew the dream was about this person. And I knew this other person was on the other side of the wall. I just knew they were there. But I didn't want to stand up, right? I didn't want to be the one who stood up, right? But I looked at the wall, and it wasn't so high that I couldn't get over the wall. But I was refusing to stand up and look over the wall. And so finally, I knew that person was there, and I decided, I looked up, and I'll never forget what I saw. I looked up, and there was just a hand extended across the top of the wall, not calling any attention to themselves, not calling any attention to me, just there waiting for when I was ready.
Mm-hmm.
I could choose, because I was on one side of this boundary.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the other side of this boundary, and they had their hand out. And I woke up. And I went, you know what? That's really what respecting a boundary is. You know you're on one side, you know the other person's on the other, and yet if you're willing to extend the hand across for the person to meet you on that side, doesn't mean you have to pull one person over the other. It means you literally can shake hands right there and speak to one another. I made a phone call that day, shared that dream, melted the whole thing, right? And started to, and had the conversations that we needed to have, because I was able to recognize in that moment that I was choosing to sit hunched up, pushed up against this wall when it really wasn't a wall.
Mm-hmm.
It was a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
It was a boundary, but I was the one turning it into a wall by crouching down. If I just stood up, turned around, faced the person, this is a person I've known my whole life. Why wouldn't I want to repair it? And that's what came up with what you were talking about, because what reminded me of it was when you said, is this suffering worth it? In the case for you, you were kind of saying, no, it does not worth the cost to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying something similar. Is it worth staying in this? Because I'm the one suffering here, but this person I've known my whole life who we care deeply about, doesn't that matter more? Isn't this worth having the difficult conversation, doing the work, leaning in? We've taken enough time to take a deep breath. Let's figure this out. Mm-hmm. And we did. And it wasn't immediate. It wasn't, when I say it melted away, doesn't mean it didn't leave a mess. Right? That had to be cleaned up. But I do think that's an important distinction for us to keep in mind. With these
that little story. Jack and Jill went up the hill and had an argument.
And had an argument and sat on the other side of the wall and protest with each other. Yeah. It requires kind of rebuilding and, rebuilding things intentionally. Mm-hmm. Whether it's our own sense of self, our own expectations, our own approach in our job, our relationship. It takes all of those things. And I think the final thing I want to say on this, we can allow people to be limited, and they don't have to be villains for it, right? We don't have to turn them into villains.
Sure.
If they let us down, it doesn't make them Draco Malfoy.
He's not that bad. But I mean, and people, when they know that they've let you down, especially if it's like, if they really respect you, they feel really bad about it. And when I finally started recounting on the people around me again, and I don't want to be like, oh, I gave them a second chance, but maybe that's kind of how it felt a little bit, where it's like all of a sudden they're like, oh, she really does believe that I can do this. She believes in me. Yeah. And when I started turning it more back into that, then all of a sudden I saw a difference. Yeah. A lot of difference.
Yeah. Makes a difference.
And they saw a lot of difference in me.
I bet. And I think that's because you shifted more into a mode of connecting with yourself and the reality of what was happening, discerning what was a story, what wasn't.
Yes.
And when we do that, it puts us back in ourselves. We use lots of different terms, right? In some terms, we kind of roll our eyes at. We get more grounded, right? We get more centered. We get more aligned. That's what that all means in practical terms. Mm-hmm. When we see it with ourselves, and when we do it with ourselves, it invites other people to do the same thing, right? And so in the end, if other people let us down, the solution to that may not be them just changing for no reason, right? But if we can shift our own selves, it may help them shift in a way, right? Ooh.
That was good.
That was good. How you feeling about it?
Great.
Good. We went over.
We did.
We got to go. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Staying Power. Hope you got a lot out of it. Ashley's looking at me like you're talking too long. Thanks so much for all of you for listening. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Pars Arrive Renovation. Remember, you can get this as a podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check out the show notes. Find out how to get in touch with us. Check out parsrenovation.com. See what they can do for you. Give them a call. Mention that you heard about them from us, and just see what happens. We will see you in another week. I'm JD.
I'm Ashley.
Thanks so much.
Bye.